have our special guest from the showing, which will deliver a presentation that is very today, and I'm quite amazed to tell you how the project of the CRC is very important. That is focused on the not only lowland rainforest of Jambi, plantation, how it affects, how the growth of the research of 12 years by 12 years of research and coming so far. Yeah, and I also would like to welcome the Vice Rector from IPB from Canada, from meeting, Vice Rector from University from IMDA, and also Vice Rector from Jambi from Canada, which is also here with us, and also all the lecturers from Jambi, from IPB, and also all participants from online meeting. And also you part of the yeah. Before we start, yes, I just from my Canada, we would like to have a group photo first. I think not everyone will be able to until the end of the meeting. So we invite everyone to come forward, and we will have a photo first, and then we start with the seminar. Yeah.
Vietnam from here, Vietnam.
Judul beliau yang apa yang tadi yang ayahnya bilang. Nah, oke ya. Bagus.
One, two, three.
Dihitung deh.
Okay, start now. So, yeah, can you find this so I have to stand behind the desk because the microphone is here. So, Professor Stefan Choi is the attention of the methodology in clinical communities. Yeah. His research is focused on the function of urban communities and the interrelationship system, which are also in line with what we will deliver today. Yeah, and also the expertise of Prof. Stefan you can see on the screen with the international communities, the increased the will appear from Stefan, for animal, ecology, and also the last several publication from Stefan. Can you go to the next slide? You can see on the screen. Yeah, this we take from the website. And today, Professor Stefan will talk about the transformation of typical modern rainforest in most project and response of farm and below-ground animal communities. Yeah. So, Stefan, we have time to play which is now. Yeah. You can our then we will follow with the question and answer. Yeah. I think without further ado, I will give the floor.
Okay. Online. Stand over there.
Yeah, yes.
Because for the sake of the that's
Too much. So I try to stand. Is this okay? Yeah. That way. Everyone is that's what some of our results of the collaboration between what I'm going to do today is to introduce you into this collaborative project going on for now 12 years. It's going to start and thereafter I will tell you a bit more about my field, my role in the project, and dig a bit deeper into the response of below animal populations. But first of all, okay. So first of all, get an overview of this what's called a collaborative research center. This is a funding scheme of the German Science Foundation. It's a special funding scheme which allows collaborative work in the period of 12 years. And we see here, we are about at the ending of that 12-year phase. For reaching these phases, we had to have dual phases. The first phase went for 2 years, then another one. Evaluated in 2015, and then a third one. So we were evaluated several times. This allowed us successful convincing our reviewers that this is an interesting topic, successful endeavor. So we were allowed to go on until this 12 years. Okay, I can do it now. It works. So all this is based on long-standing collaboration, as I was already mentioning, but it's not only the universities here in Indonesia which are important, but also the national level collaborators and very importantly, of course, our field level collaborators, including national park, plus rainforest, part states, and very importantly, of course, our local parks. Now I start a bit with going back in time. This is now more than 12 years ago when we started with the site selection with our counterparts led by IPB and of course, but we also went to Sulawesi, sites are there. This was quite a tedious task. We had the idea of what we want to do, so we want to investigate transformation processes from rainforest to plantations, but really implementing the project on site was quite a challenge. Finding sites and really suitable places where to implement it. This was a major task. It took quite a long time, several trips going into the forest. And, finally, we ended up with a program which I will introduce in a second. And then, of course, we had to convince the reviewers that this is a interesting topic. This is the first evaluation where the reviewers and the crew from the German Science Foundation came all to Jumpy and we presented what we aim to do in the next 12 years. And in fact, we were successful and they agreed that we can go on for the first phase. And now what I want to introduce you to is the goal of the overall project. So what we wanted to investigate is the transformation of rainforests into plantation systems, and we selected actually Sumatra, of course, intentionally, because Sumatra is a place where this transformation process, especially in the lowlands, is really at the forefront. So much of the local rainforests have been transformed, and this, of course, causes concerns because it may threaten biodiversity and major ecosystem functioning, but also it may actually offer perspectives to increase agricultural land and rural land. And the overall actually the goal of the project was may go on actually, so just work again here. The overall goal of the project was to establish knowledge on ecological and socio-economic functions and trade-offs of the lowlands to protect elements, ecological functions, and human welfare. And the overall aim of the project was to contribute to reconciling conservation and human needs. This is, of course, a really big goal. Actually, really, so some are concerned we can manage to really reach these goals. Then back to the Jumpy and the lowland rainforest region, which you can see here outlined. I was mentioning that this is a region where this conversion of rainforest into agricultural plantation systems is very much advanced, but there also are regions where we have touch in part at least rainforest remnants left. One is in your last national park, and the second one is in our rainforest. These were kind of the starting points when we around these remnants of rainforest were established the project. So we identified this actually as an ideal region for investigating this major current and future conservation versus human needs conflicts. We set it up in a scientifically oriented way. This is something which is often before. Actually, and we see that all these years, this was basically the foundation of the success of the project. This is that we set it up in a replicated design in two landscapes, replicating individual treatments of the project. Well, I'll also introduce in a minute. Into landscapes which allows to generalize overall findings. And of course, this is based on statistical analysis of results. All that contributes to the success in respect to publication and international recognition of the results. We identified that the region there is matching the convention of biological and social boundaries. So basically, the region matches on one side lowland rainforest, on the other side it matches the plantation of oil palm. So this was of course very important for the integration of these ecological and social studies. We intentionally also want to focus on smallholder systems because this is something which is ongoing more and more, the adoption of oil palm by smallholders. So we also want to investigate these kind of future perspective of transformation systems in industry. And I will come back to these integrated experiments later on. So we do have the situation that probably the movements of Sumatra, we have major transformation systems based on jungle rubber, and these is a system of agroforests, which is declining as a land use system in the last 10-20 years, because it is more and more adopted more changed into more intensive plantations on the ground and agricultural plantations. So we have these four land use systems which dominate by far the lowlands in province and rainforest regions in Sumatra. We wanted to identify the environmental, economic, social impacts of these transformation processes. We want to identify measures for improvement and strategies to implement sustainable land use systems at landscape scale. This is very important. So from the beginning, we had the idea that what we do can be scaled up to really larger regional or even global rainforest regions in these. And we stressed that was based on really intensive collaboration. I want to highlight that once again. We established really a wide range of counterparts of all of the projects. We also established the framework of the Convention of Biological Diversity, test and benefit sharing measures. This is just really to highlight that all this was based really on truly collaborative effort. Now, also to highlight that this is really a successful endeavor. Science perspective, of course, this is measured in terms of publications, and this is the same. You can see we published more than 400 papers now in these 11 years, or 11.5 years. And notably, most ones are with our counterparts, and really also figure I'm very proud of is that more than 100 of these papers are published by Indonesian students, basically as first authors. See some of the celebrations of students that we had. Quite a number of German PhD and postdoctoral students, but also as you can see, it's quite a large number of Indonesian PhD students and also master and bachelor students. It's not a powerful figure, it's quite somewhat higher by now. I was able to compare with the newest figure for presentation. But now, so this was to give you a bit of overview of the overall. Now, what to do is put into some highlights of the project, some overall highlights and out of my field, but then integrating, digging deeper into looking into biodiversity changes in the plant and below ground food webs that would lead to energy fluxes, and giving a bit of output into the integrated experiments of the project. And our initiatives to integrate ecological and socioeconomic perspectives. Now, there is no doubt that planting oil palm does have massive benefits for local population, and you can see that here, based on panel data from the project, oil palm cultivation increases household consumption expenditure and thereby improves household diet and nutrition, calorie consumptions, and also fruit and vegetable consumption. So there is a massive benefit of adopting oil palm. This actually applies also to a wide range of different types of villages. So you see water households, domesticated farm households, but it's also actually the non-farm households. So all of these benefits they spread basically into the economics, not only farm level, but also village and regional level. On the other hand, we have, as we expected, we also have negative effects from the ecological and ecosystem functioning perspective. As one of the concerns, of course, is that the transformation of rainforests really negatively affects carbon storage. And this is also something we investigated, and in fact, it is that way. But actually, things are not that simple. In the first place, what certainly everyone would expect is that this transformation from rainforests here to the left side, this is jungle rubber plantations, we see a massive decline of standing stock of plant biomass. Most of the carbon actually in these rainforests is located in living biomass, in trees. Of course, with transformation and clearance of the forest, we have a massive loss of upfront biomass. Looking below ground, the picture is a bit different. You see that the loss is less pronounced. Well, this is largely due to the fact that we have a massive pool of carbon soil, which actually is not that much affected by this transformation. Now, if we look into a bit more details and look into net primary production, and this is actually the total net primary production, this figure, and I see is the local ecosystem net primary production. The total primary production declines quite massively towards actually rubber plantations. So then you can see in oil palm plantation the net primary production increases compared to rainforest. So the oil palm system is more productive. And rainforest, and this is of course due to the fact that this is massively fertilized. Now the interesting thing is that of course the major part of this net primary production is actually not staying on site, but it's exported as harvest. So despite we do have increase in primary production on site, there is a reduction in input of carbon and resources. This is here the figure is a bit less than increasing. So the reduction is a bit lower than it is in rubber plantations, but it's also pronounced. So of course, this is something which may cause concerns. Now, another trade-off which we was going to look into in detail is the relationship between human benefit, and this is here actually the x-axis is revenue in income, and then species richness. And beginning the aim of investigating diversity at a very wide way from microbes, bacteria, and fungi up to birds and bats. This is 14 major groups of organisms, and we wanted to look into response of each of these groups to integrate really across biota. And as you can see, there is quite a massive decline in species richness in most of the groups. Gross margin. The decline often, as we'll see, is between 50 to 60%. But actually, there is also some groups that may even locally at least increase. And this is in particular in soil. Yeah, so we have a differential response above and below ground. And this, I'll come back to this in a minute. So there is a kind of universal trade-off. Response varies to some extent the different taxonomical groups. What we want to look into from the beginning, as mentioned, is really larger scales, landscape scale. This means, from the perspective of diversity, looking into what is called meta-diversity. So this is a change in diversity in space. This is due to the setup of the project, what we could do for all of these groups. And what you see here is on one side, where I was just starting to introduce, is the loss of species. And on the other side, the loss and gain of species, of course, most of the groups that we see, we have loss of diversity. But as I already was mentioning, there's some groups, especially in soil and microbes, there is even an increase. An interesting aspect from the landscape scale perspective is to look into processes which contribute to homogenization in the landscape or to heterogenization of these animal and microbial plant groups. And as you can see from the principal perspective, one may expect that these transformation processes will both be contributing to homogenization. And the effect is what groups where this applies, but we also have a lot of things that achieve at the landscape scale where diversity is more heterogeneously distributed. This, of course, from a landscape perspective, is more heterogeneous distribution contributes also to diversity in the landscape. So this is an important aspect which often is not considered now, because those studies we look at local diversity losses and not into larger scales and expense. What we were particularly interested in is functional aspects of these biodiversity changes. Functional aspects mean, for example, the processing of carbon nutrients, and for being able to do that, we needed to really invest in these microbial groups in detail and measure also functional parameters like biomass to be able to transform our measurements into energy fluxes. This is just a sketch of what we have in the end also achieved. So we did in a comprehensive way look into the above ground world, so the canopy footweb, but also into the below ground world. And this is a summarizing figure already. Where we link these above ground, below ground energy fluxes, and this is what I'm now going to introduce in some more detail. This is, of course, a major task. It's actually something I was from the beginning. I was really aiming at getting insight into these very complex systems above and below the ground. But it's, of course, well, one of the biggest challenges in terrestrial ecology, because it's so immensely complex. There's thousands of species we have in the canopy, tropical, especially tropical rainforests, and the same applies actually below the ground. So this is really an endeavor. Well, I hardly dare to go into from the beginning, But I have the idea we may reach that goal. So for getting a hand on energy fluxes, you need to apply kind of semi-quantitative methods. You need to have measures you can scale, on a square meter basis for both the above ground and below ground communities. And for the above ground, well, we did that by applying this canopy popping. So there is an insecticide which is blown into the canopy, tranquilizing insects, so spiders, and so on. They rain down, collected in these funnels. And yeah, we can scale them really on an area basis. We collect them on a square meter basis, allowing you then to calculate really energy fluxes across the whole plantation. Well, this is what kind of rained down. This is an immense number of individuals. This is kind of the top 10 of the groups. You can see most what is raining down is actually hymenopterans. It's really actually ants. Two-thirds of all these hymenopterans, and the hymenopterans themselves are kind of taking up about 30% of all the individuals which are raining down. The termites, the second most abundant group, contributes about 70%. Termites, actually, they are very heterogeneously distributed localities. Sometimes you have buildings dropping down, other times they're dropping down. So this is something we did not actually therefore look into too much detail. Then the third group actually is malevolence, then there is difference, and so on. An interesting kind of thing to realize here is that probably most of you expected to have in the first place actually herbivores, because the canopy food web is, as everyone schools, textbooks assume, this is a canopy food web and it's based on herbivores. But you see here, the first one herbivore group is cut down here with the reference belonging to the herbivores. And then there is the beetles, also major groups of beetles are herbivores. But we have actually, for example, stringtails and also the termites being kind of detritivores. So we have in the canopy, although this is a kind of a green world, we have a lot of groups which are living kind of in the brown world. And I'll come back to this. And also, of course, most leopards actually have predators of the country. So we have a lot of species from higher up trophic levels, from predators, also including actually, of course, spiders, which are also and from a perspective of course, control of potential pest species, these are very close to also look into world. So that's what we did with the help of a whole lot of Indonesian students and our collaborators. We kind of sorted close to a million of individuals of insects and spiders. So this was really a major task in this sorted of species. I also contacted this, and then we compiled field guides, and also increase taxonomy, which is a database accessible by anyone that could include all the figures, and this is something that we and of course, we realize that most of the species are probably through the science. We have to deal with this also complexity of unknowns. This, of course, can only be dealt with if you properly document everything. That's what we aim to do. And we did that for a number of groups. This is kind of more comprehensive here. We did that for ants and wasps and bees and swingtails, also beetles and spiders. And I said, this is on one side based on the documentation with pictures, but also the barcoding most of these groups. But this is all controlled work. Now, what I want to continue with is a bit more the functional perspective. The functional perspective, I said, is based on figures like biomass, allowing us then to calculate energy fluxes. What we see here is the canopy put from rainforest to wind farm, and actually the size of the pies reflect the biomass of these different groups, from herbivores to detritivores, also predators. And in the first place, what you recognize, of course, what you also expected is to have a massive decline in biomass from rainforest to rubber, but especially to rubber and wind farm plantations. We actually had a minimum rubber plantations, presumably due to the fact that rubber is deciduous tree. And the owner established once and again after shedding of leaves. This contributes to this kind of paucity of community rubber plantation. Another thing which is, of course, interesting to recognize is that, again, you see that the biomass here of the detritivores is as large as it is in the herbivores. We'll come back to this also in a minute. Then we look into the predators, spiders. We have a large fraction of the biomass being predators. Also, actually, some bees contributed to it, and also ants are probably predators. So, predators are really a major component of our farm. If we look into the canopy of rubber plantations, this is even more pronounced. See, this dominance of predators in this canopy footbeds of rubber plantations. And if we now look into wind farm plantations, again, the segment of the predators is much smaller, but the segment of the herbivores is much bigger. So in wind farm, you would have a larger fraction of herbivores potentially functioning also as pest species feeding the wind farm. And on the other side, we have a few predators. Also, we may infer that the top-down control of these herbivores is not as effective as it is, for example, in rubber plantations. It limits for basically also ecological processes in these areas. This is what we then I wanted to continue by calculating energy fluxes. So we can calculate easily using standard relationships between biomass and energy transfer. We can calculate energy flux through these trophic groups. And this is summarized through these three major groups. On one side, herbivores, detritivores or microbivores, and predators. And what we see here once again is now even more pronounced from an energy flux perspective that canopy footweb is predominantly based on detritivores or microbivores, not on herbivores. This is something which is probably not recognized. Well, we also have this fairly large segment of predators. Now, switching to rubber, we again see from an energy flux perspective the predators dominant. So we have obviously a very effective transformation or propagation of energy to high trophic predators. And what you see then in the wind farm, we have this dominance of herbivores and a small fraction predators, which may compromise the effective control of its workforce in North Atlantic. Now, what we wanted to do, as I introduced, we wanted to link the above and below ground worlds. For the below ground world, we also used kind of quantitative methods to look into below ground elements, especially this is based actually on taking soil cores and then extract the elements by heat. Then collecting again on semi-quantitative way, allowing to calculate in area-based figures. This is what is done here, so I'm jumping into right away into energy fluxes. And this is certainly an example between rainforest and rainfall. And again, we look into the processing of detritus into detritivores, orange or into herbivores. Below ground, we also have, for example, root feeding species. We have the predator level, comprising, for example, spiders, but also actually ants, which we recognize after development in predators. But we compare these two systems from energy flux perspective, we actually see the biggest biomass, and we see, first of all, here a major flux into the detritivore compartment. But this is also the case in oil pumps. But what you can see is in oil pump, this is mainly due to the fact that energy is processed by large detritivores. This is actually predominantly thermal. And the interesting and somewhat some concern, this compartment is actually based on very few species, and the few species are actually invasive. It's presumably one native species which contribute most to this energy flux. So it's probably a rather sensitive system in that respect, because it's less upward from the perspective of the number of species which are contributing to these processes. But then just going on to summarize that both now, looking into this both compartments, above ground and below ground compartments, and also looking again at energy flux perspective. Now, what you in the first place may realize from these figures is that this is actually the detritivore compartment, and this is the energy processed by the below ground system. And you can see again, this is rainforest and oil. You can see that actually the energy processing is kind of similar in both of these systems. If you compare the detritivore and herbivore system, so the green and the brown world, you see that the brown world is basically outweighing the green world by at least a factor of 10. The energy processing is really based on the below ground system. It's not too surprising, because it's probably not really appreciated. So the herbivore system is only contributing a small fraction to the energy flux in these food webs in both actually in rainforest and so on the other hand, as I mentioned, the overall energy flux might be rather similar in both, but the concerning thing is that the energy flux in oil palm is based on few large detritivore species such as earthworms, and in rainforest actually based on a whole suite of different, typically small-sized detritivores, including, for example, collaborates and mites. So we do have a better understanding of these consequences of transformation processes. We now have good figures on overall energy fluxes, two major compartments of this ecosystem. But this brings me a bit back to how to reconcile these conservation and human need conflict, and for contributing to that reconciliation, we established range of experiments in the second phase of the project. One is the so-called efforts by the diversity enrichment experiment, where we actually planted 6 species of trees into oil palm plantations, and the major goal was to explore basically benefits and costs of increased tree diversity in oil palm landscapes. And what we, after the first 4 years of the experiment, already saw is, on the one side, we were able to successfully establish more trees in these oil palm plantations, sort of trivial thing. A very surprising thing we found is that there was actually no decline in yield, no significant decline in yield, despite we cut 40% of the oil. This is due to the fact that the other oil palms, they basically compensate for this reduction in basically canopy coverage of the oil palm plantation. So at least for these out of 6 years, we still do not find this significant reduction. What we also saw is that this increasing diversity of the trees in the plantation, that is actually fruit and timber trees, and timber trees, this resulted in a vast increase in species diversity across basically all the different groups of diversity trees, including plants and insects and so on, and both above and below. Another approach we want to look into for mitigating this negative impact of transformation processes was to look into potential reductions in fertilizer addition and in the use of herbicides in oil palm plantations. This was done in our oil palm manipulation experiment, with the goal to analyze the most important alternative options in a comprehensive way. And this is fertilizer. Again, very briefly, some major results depicted on the left side. Again, a surprising thing was oil palm yield did not significantly decline without fertilizer addition within these 4 years. Well, this is due to the fact that the soil basically of these oil palm plantations is kind of saturated with nutrients. And they last for quite a long time, so they have legacy effects of these nutrient additions and deprivation or reduction of nutrient input is not effective oil palm plantation. The surprising thing was the relative gross margin was at a maximum without fertilizer. Of course, reduction in fertilizer, there's a reduction in costs of the plantations, and on the other side, we have no reduction in yield, so the gross margin is kind of increasing. And what we also saw is we have a broad range of positive effects of these measures of biodiversity and economic indicators. There's quite a number of publications I will also show you today. So we do have a number of options how to mitigate this biodiversity human welfare problem. And for being able to then scale these results to the landscape, we are currently, well, in the third phase, we implemented this what we call landscape assessment, so we investigated more than actually it's a total of 30 sites across the Jambi province, where we looked into a whole range of ecosystem parameters and biodiversity parameters. We are able to scale up these results to the landscape. This is just to highlight that, of course, with the third phase of the project, was major aim in reaching is really coming to synthesis, so getting things really together. We proposed actually 13 different synthesis projects. I think we already were able to succeed in quite a number of these synthesis projects and approaches, which normally is based on postdoctoral work. And there is now really, you really see the benefits of such a long-term integrated project, which allows to publish integrated perspectives in prestigious journals like Nature and similar high-profile journals. So this is kind of back basing, also from my perspective, of the reach where we succeeded well. We can come up with some major conclusions here. So, combining biodiversity and social approaches allow us to identify a strategy for improving this human welfare biodiversity conflict, minimizing proposed perspective to reduce losses of biodiversity and functioning. I also want to highlight my perspective. Integrated analysis from above and below ground systems is really needed for developing conservation strategies, considering both biodiversity and functioning. And I think an important message here is that the below ground system is also attention in developing such strategies. So then, looking back, integrated projects like the one we provide perspective for mitigating biodiversity and this is basically what we kind of set out to reach. I think we're already reached quite a bit and ongoing work I think will further contribute to this perspectives and looking forward to continuation. The project, as I said, is running out this year, but we likely will have the chance to contribute to smaller, to continue with smaller absorption, and of course continue with our collaboration with Indonesia. I'm very much looking forward to that.
So is not interested in us. Yes. What's very interesting in the comprehensive project even that about city foreign aquaculture mostly dominated by Mediterranean, Collecterranean, and Latitude, in my opinion. And of course, I saw Mediterranean and Collecterranean, but no Latitude. So I just wondering, I think this is very important to continue working. That was, yeah, that was a question or a question. And the second, it's in my opinion, it's not very useful. But I thought that in rainforest, the dominant is never before, but in fact, you saw that the dominant is the big force. That's very interesting. So, is it common in other areas or is it only in STEM? And the good one is actually regarding the unpublished data from for that one. Is it the one in nature Okay, so first the information. Okay, that's all. Thank you very much,
First of all, you have to recognize that the figures I'm showing with these relative numbers of the top 10 groups is based on real numbers. With biomass, don't have the figures in mind, really, but I'm sure that the documents are kind of moving upwards because many of the larvae are rather large compared to so don't have the figures in mind, but nevertheless, I assume that even, for example, with doctrines, many of the larvae will actually not rely on plant material only. But we know that actually from other systems in South America, this has been looked into some extent, using, say, isotopes, and they showed that many of the micro developments, they actually live also on the surface of they scratch algae and lichens and so on, rather than feeding really on plant leaves. We may expect that we will look into that with so I expect that we will see also in the developments that they to a certain extent these are actually contributing to this more microbial feeding, microbial slightly more component of the so I think this figure in a quantitative way is really novel. That you see that the canopy that is from an energy perspective not primarily based on basically green material or green material from trees. We have to be very careful here because there's also algae. Certainly, they certain role in these. This is some of the very tricky things to investigate because to get a handle of the diet of these different groups in the canopy is, of course, quite difficult. We may do that, by employing specific methods like say isotope analysis, but also what we're actually currently doing, what we're looking into amino acids, and with the amino acids, you can really trace the basis of it. So this is ongoing work. That is already documented in the paper from pressure, also in the part of this papers is as I said, these calculations of energy fluxes have never been done to that extent. So we can't compare really with other systems. Stable. But the second revision, it's run on like this. So this is more schematic. So there is no physical aspect.
For the question, because it gives us changes from the 24 to the actual this is also with the other transformation in
This course, storage, this compartment is, well, it's not lost, but it's still if you export the wood or of course, this is the worst you can do because this is quite a weak, this is power production on site. If at least large part of wood is used for timber production and so on, you at least have a neck phase that this carbon is entering.
So then it connected to my next question about that one. So regarding also for that in the rainforest, the rainforest actually the number of people per hectare. Like before, but you said that the species, the richness and also the evenness of the people is much more higher in the rainforest compared to the oil palm, which has a low number, low but significant or dominance of it for oil palm. So is it also this dominance of the people actually that in the highest and plus from the oil palm compared to the one in the rainforest? So then the flux in rainforest from the detective forest is all along that one.
Specifically, first there needs to consider this energy flux that below and see that the energy flux is much higher. It's energy. So although I was kind of stressing that the canopy that also is based to a large extent, even to a prominent extent on this microbial detritus was. This contributes very little to the overall energy flux because the figures are really energy doesn't below ground way more. Maybe a bit highlighting or stressing another aspect, and I was really focusing on energy flux perspectives. So, from this perspective, well, this below ground world and the price of the world is really dominating. If we look at the diversity, then the figure is somewhat changed. Because what we generally see is that the diversity of the insects in the canopy is much higher than it is below ground. This is something also interesting, and this is almost just to recognize. The typical thing of diversity, of course, is that you see the diversity is related to narrow niches, especially narrow trophic niches. Most specifically, which takes a major role. The diversity is based on species which are specialized to certain diets. This is what we typically see in many herbivores, although also this is more and more big questions at least. But also we see that in parasitoids. Many of the parasitoids are really host specific, and parasitize only single or few species of hosts. And this, of course, again contributes massively to the diversity. We do have the more species of the parasitoids exceed 1,000. And this is only a smaller fraction of what really exists. We have thousands of parasitoids in these canopies. And this virtually does not exist below ground. But the reason for this kind of paucity of species below ground is that most of the species in soil, all these microbial detritus, are rather generalist from the perspective of their trophic niche. And something which is this. The reason for that is that the below ground system is based on dead organic matter. And dead organic matter is per definition, of course, not responding to be eaten, because it's dead. We cannot evolve in a co-evolutionary perspective. And the basis for this anthropic specialization above the ground is co-evolutionary process. It's plants which respond to herbivores, producing secondary compounds and so on. These secondary compounds that allow to specialize certain species through to specialize on these specific diets. And the same is of course true for parasitoids. Parasitoids specialize to these narrow spectrum hosts. This contributes to this diversity of the plant, not matched below. We have kind of disparity between kind of a diversity perspective and a more ecosystem energy basis. I was highlighting for the latter one from the energy perspective, and this from the ecologist perspective may not reflect what is basically policy on the diversity.
So there are questions from the audience. Yeah, this one.
First of all, my name is Suman. I'm the student of Hamid University. I would like to ask two questions regarding from the PowerPoint presentations. First is that the system of personal structures from the series research, because there are also phenomena assembly and places that extreme temperatures. And the second, from the topic which meets the diversity and human needs. What is the recommendation after the project finished from the energy perspective? Thanks.
Maybe first one, the seasonal dynamics, and at least from an energy perspective, it doesn't look as if the seasonal changes in South Sumatra are having such a dramatic. But we did not look into kind of seasons with really serious droughts. This was normal seasonal dynamics, and I said this did not have massive effects on the changes in energy diversity as well as energy process. Also, reflecting on it's too surprising, and we were really close to the equator, even at the dry season, jumping is not really dry. Made quite a bit of rain also at dry season, and this probably is somehow sufficient for maintaining this long. One of the exceptions I was also mentioned lately is rubber, because rubber is not shading. And this may affect certain effects. They may also be responsible for this rather specific community of rubber plantation. But then the final question, of course, is not tricky. So, what do we recommend? First of all, what I really want to highlight is that we should not focus on a local perspective. Looking just on reduction in diversity, comparing local oil palm plantation and rainforest is something which is basically not adequate. So, as I showed, we need to adopt a landscape, a larger perspective, and look into diversity aspects at the landscape. This landscape perspective will, to some extent, come up with rather different recommendations, because at the landscape, we even see that plantations may contribute to the diversity of landscapes. But of course, what also has to recognize, stress from the beginning, is that the transformation process, especially in Sumatra, is kind of what should be kind of done, should have been done. And this transformation now in the lowlands of human elements of acres, which is only about 4% land. And even this 4% are to a large extent secondary forests rather than primary. The remnants of primary forest is really very, and there has to be, I think, from my perspective, kind of a goal to improve this situation. This is exactly why we set up this and this kind of promising result of that experiment is that it shows it's quite possible. Even though this restoration measures are rather quick, but it's after less than 10 years, the planted trees are only talking beyond. And we see a recovery which is really remarkable. So this is the pathway towards more naturalization of landscapes, and as we see, there is large interest in that experiment, and with our companies, this may be adopted in the future. What's a comment on that? It was for us very satisfying that we were able to show that this pathways are, easy to establish. But of course, the political situation, parts of this will set the boundaries of the limitations of this development. From my perspective, the situation in the jungle is that we have dropped to the bottom of the transformation process. And now, in the next decades, I think we have a bit of a swing. Naturalization means along, for example, regions where the productivity is low, along river sides, and there also is issues there, opinions from rivers and trees. So, especially along these lines, they see kind of a swing back towards systems, especially promising because these rivers that we function as corridors for more contribute substantially to the landscape scale to the recovery of biomass. This is still possible for sure, as we see. I think this is kind of for the next.
Anyone else want to ask? Okay. But before going to different question, she was based on the environment where it is a lot of soil and one what's that connection to the nation to the learn and how to go
Stay away from peatlands, the soils, luckily for various reasons. The peatland situation is of course very peculiar because we have this swamp forests, swamp plantations, making things a lot more difficult. Especially looking at low extend investigations also in peatland biodiversity. It would be something which is, from my perspective, urgently needed. It should extend to other systems which are of eminent importance, especially also from the perspective of carbon balances. I really cannot answer the question, especially from the perspective of energy classes. From the diversity perspective, I wouldn't expect that the figures are too much different. Because the canopies, of course, are anyway similar. And even though this is a single-sided system, we also will have large below-ground compartment, and these figures in terms of energy fluxes can dominate by also this will be the same.
Okay, thank you, Stefan, and I'll do it.
The research results. So all my name is Lina. I'm from Tropical Horticulture master's student. So I want to ask about the research result. Here that state that water in oral translations is greater than in rainforest. So does that means that the nutrient cycle is the same or even better than rainforest? And the second question is, what method that you use to take the sample of certain farmland?
Let's start with the first one. Of course, this is cooking differences. Energy nutrient fluxes in rainforest are based on natural recycling. And you know, of course, rainforest is totally different in that respect that there is massive input of mineral nutrients. But the moment the recycling system is totally different, really based on minerals which are brought in by man and then we produce massive. As we showed, one may reduce actually this input without compromising the yield. So, there's a big scope here for a more stable management of this plantation. In rainforest, the system is that we have a recycling process which is due to soil. There is, as you know, this is extremely complex, very interesting, and still until today not fully understood. But it's based on microbes, of course, especially we have the major importance of mycorrhiza. It's the dominant part. It's VA mycorrhiza. You know, but in the different parts we also have the ectomycorrhiza. So, and the coupling of this evolution fluxes in rainforest is probably kind of a shortcut because these microbes directly link to the nutrients in the litter and exploit the nutrients out of this litter compartment. And this is very effective, allowing this very high productivity without any fertilizer addition. This is very effective. You know, in oil palm, as I showed the figures, that primary reduction exceeds rainforest, but this is based on a massive input of mineral fertilizers, and the rainforest manages to have this very high productivity despite there is no external nutrients. It's not really true because we also have a deposition of nitrogen. But overall, there is very high net primary production despite very little of input from the plant. This is a very remarkable figure. This is really a sustainable system, even more far. And this is very, very different in oil. The second question we have to
The second question is what method did you use to take the sample of soil type?
Yeah, I mean, this was something I was my background. So I'm an ecologist, we did a lot of quantitative work. And if you're interested in the quantitative side and ecology, you have to get, as I was stressing, the area-based figures. And for soil animals, this most important, most widely used method is actually heat extraction. What you do is go to the field and you take soil cores, take it to the lab, put them into extractors when they are heated from the top, pressing basically the fauna out of the sample into a collection. This is what we established also in Germany, also at least expected like that existing. This is something because it's technically a bit more demanding, a sectional complex, more difficult, but still more difficult. This is also a important message. We really have to come to a quantitative perspective. This is what's the goal project. This we establish some technical machinery allowing you to quantitate riches.
We have one more question for there's room for one question before we do the anyone else want to ask last question? Maybe it was in success this year. We said before explain the distribution of the you know how
these pictures. First leaves which is it's not the it's is that they do not spread into the native or very little native forest. But the reason is something I explained, also relating to the increase in diversity of microbes and fungi. The factor which is most important for this beneficial impact of the plantations is the inhibition. Acidic soils are rather poor in many species, microbes, but also different animals. pH the low pH is counteracted by two mechanisms. It's burning, first rate, active towards increasing pH. So it's a kind of inevitable associated process with transformation. If that is running, it's increasing pH, but also of course most of the transformations are lying. Asian of the sites is for sure related to the increasing pH and this contributes to what I was showing this high processing of energy. But I said this is really based on few species, presumably on
okay, thank you, Stefan. I think we're already at the end of the session. Please give a big applause for Pastor. Before we close, I would like to maybe today's seminar. So regarding the transformation from the Roman forest into the oil plantation, we would have from film perspective that and on one hand, we definitely perspective for the finding the city the most confident fact you see very quick and the other is findings of density basic findings for if we look into the many of able to increase the improving their nutrition and also the finding, yeah, and you look at the implementation and to increase the diversity of the plants, which is if there is a general that is planted between the actually increase the diversity of so we stress here the concept of because we don't have to look more into this section that might that we might able to strategy for the going sustainable. Yeah, I think that's for presentation and thank you for all the ideas that I mean finding the building and also for using online live streaming. Thank you again, and I hope this our knowledge and hopefully if you have any question you can we can look into consultation that have been released from thank you, and that was this.